Right, thanks for coming along, everyone, this afternoon. Before we begin, can I have a quick show of hands where everyone's from? I guess most of you are America, right? Anyone not from America? Where are you from?
From London.
Okay. And do you use online shopping, groceries? Perfect. Right answer. Okay, so Ocado is an online grocery company based in the UK. We're actually the world's largest online grocery company. We've been going for about 15 years now. We cover most of the UK market. My role at Ocado is I look after a couple of aspects of our web platform. So I look after what we call Ocado Smart Platform, which is going to be our white label grocery retail service that we're going to sell to other retailers around the world. But I'll come on to that in a little bit. The other thing that I look after is our non-food family of sites. So we've also been branching out some general merchandise sites like pet food and accessories, kitchen and dining, and we're also about to launch a premium beauty website in conjunction with Marie Claire next year. We've been going since the early 2000s, and essentially the original idea was the three founders actually used to work in finance, and the idea was that we're actually going to just use a bunch of off-the-shelf technology to sell groceries online. So they're just going to take an off-the-shelf web shop system, an off-the-shelf warehouse system, off-the-shelf logistics system, bolt them all together with MQ, and it would all just work. Of course, they very quickly realized that it didn't. And so from then on, we've basically taken nearly the complete opposite track. So we build pretty much everything in-house. We're big users of open source, contribute a bit back, like increasing amounts now. But basically, it turns out that delivering groceries is quite hard, which is where the interest lies, really. And you might think, well, e-commerce in general is a pretty solved problem, seemingly. People have been delivering online for a long time now. What makes groceries so different? Well, one of the primary things is the nature of the products themselves. So if you take something like sushi, it's really fragile. You've got to keep it refrigerated, and it's got a really short shelf life. So the way that you handle that product is completely different to the way that you might handle a book, right? So number one, it means you've got to do what we call the last mile, which is delivering it to the customer yourself. You can't just put it in the post and have like the Royal Mail or the US Postal Service deliver it for you. You've got to do it in your own specialist vans. No one's going to give you these. You've got to be able to do things like give customers 1 hour slots, because you can't leave someone's groceries on their doorstep, which are frozen and refrigerated. So you've got to know they've got to be in. And that means you've got to have a very sophisticated logistics system. No off-the-shelf logistics system is going to do this for you. It's also got to be, because groceries are a low-margin product, but that you sell a huge volume of them, you've got to do it really efficiently to make money from it. And so that drives a lot of this stuff. Furthermore, you've got to really, these days, you've got to be offering same-day delivery, which is an increased challenge. So there's a ton of stuff from the kind of the logistics side, from all that kind of thing, right through to like predicting supply chains. So if you think back to the sushi example, or maybe something like strawberries, they have a really short shelf life, and you've got to order the right stuff in. They're relatively expensive products, low margin, so you really need to minimize waste, which means you've got to have very sophisticated ways of predicting demand, and things which can be quite unpredictable. So if you take strawberries, like a big deal, strawberries in the UK is Wimbledon, tennis. And so demand for strawberries goes through the roof at that point, but you can't possibly have an algorithm determine that. So all your systems have got to have the right handles to be able to tune them for these kinds of things. Secondly, the actual nature of the shopping itself is very different. So unlike when you go, buy a book or a pair of shoes or something like that, you don't just buy one thing, you buy 50 things typically. So a non-food site would be 2 or 3. We're 50. And that means the user experience on the site is going to be very different, and it's got to be tailored for that kind of shop. Also, you do it every week. So you do this huge shop every week, and it can be quite tedious, and it can also be quite boring. So you've got to try and figure out how to ameliorate that. So we've done things like we've actually built an algorithmic shopping engine, so that it will actually look at what you typically buy, and you can sign up to the service, and it will actually algorithmically place the orders for you without you visiting the site or touching the mobile app at all. Obviously, this is not perfect, but it uses your shopping habits to create kind of a basic order. The idea is then you can then use that to create the basics, and then tweak it with maybe your mobile app when you're in a train on the way to work or whenever you find a spare moment. So that's a relatively popular service. Now, the other thing is we're online only. We don't have any stores at all. So whereas most of our competitors, essentially the process works a bit like this. You go onto the website, you place an order, it gets sent to your local store, and some guy wanders around the store, puts the items in a basket, sticks it in a van, drives it to your house, and it's kind of as simple as that. We don't do that. We actually have a couple of very large fulfillment centers. We have one in just outside London. We have one in the Midlands here. And these are vast facilities, right? So they're like the area of 9 football pitches and 6 stories high. And the orders get put together in as automated a fashion as we can manage before they get sent out to you. And this drives a lot of efficiency. Anyway, so the real point is there's a whole load of challenges everywhere you look with it. So even just coming down to how you lay out the products in one of those fulfillment centers, like we have a neural networks-based system just specifically to figure out where to put the products so we can optimize the throughput of the warehouse. So the next big evolution for us, basically, is reselling our complete end-to-end solution to other retailers around the world. So we've already done this once in the UK with a bricks and mortar retailer called Morrison's. So they're one of the biggest 4 supermarkets in the UK. We basically operate their entire e-commerce solution for them. If you go to the website or mobile apps, it's the same as ours. And we actually do all of the last mile for that too. And the next stage is something we're building at the moment, is actually doing that internationally for other retailers. Anyway, so tech stack, we use loads of open source, mostly Java, increasing amounts of Scala, where all of our new stuff is based on AWS, so taking a microservices approach and getting AWS to do as much of the heavy lifting for us. So as you see, we're in a period of big change, especially with building the new services, the white label services for our international customers. And so one thing we took a lot of interest in was actually APM, because we have a huge number of teams, all producing software, some of whom wouldn't traditionally have been touched by the customer. So we have probably around about 100 apps that need to have APM installed. So we thought we'd give it a go with our non-food sites to start with. I'm sure you've all tried it. It's very easy to get up and running. We had a couple of issues, though. Probably the biggest one was actually security related. And there are 2 factors to that, really. So one was single sign-on. It made it kind of doable that we could do it for a single team. But beyond that, the lack of single sign-on meant that it wasn't going to be practical to roll it out to community developers, which are like 600 large. Also, there was an issue with the way that HTTP parameters can leak out in transaction traces. I don't know if any of you guys have come across this before. But essentially in New Relic, you can turn on an option to capture HTTP parameters. And that was quite worrying to us because we handle things like consumers' passwords in their parameters. And absolutely the last thing we want to do is have any way of capturing that stuff. So we want to roll it out across the organization. But specifically those 2 security issues were a big problem. Lucky coincidence, I happened to bump into some New Relic guys at QCon in London, which is probably one of the biggest conferences, developer conferences in the UK, and also over here, actually. I actually had no idea that New Relic had any kind of enterprise staff, because I didn't think it really needed it. Unlike most kind of enterprisey software, it kind of just worked as far as we were concerned. Anyway, so Chris basically put us directly in touch with the head of security at New Relic and gave us some solutions to some of these things. So the main thing we did was turn on high security mode, and there's a bunch of stuff, including enforcing SSL, zapping all those HTTP parameters, so it's impossible to turn it on. And in fact, you can't turn off high security mode without well, in fact, we can't do it at all. Only the head of security at New Relic can actually do it for us. Big problem here, though, is that it stops us using custom attributes, which is a bit of a pain for insights. So that's something we're trying to work around at the moment. We also implemented SSO, which you can do as part of the enterprise package. Very straightforward. It actually even worked with our custom SAML provider that we have ourselves in-house. So from a non-technical point of view, New Relic also helped us out here. So they actually came in on site and ran a bunch of seminars about various parts of the technology stack, so APM, browser, insights, which was a really, really big help to actually roll this out to a large number of teams across different kind of organizational boundaries, some of whom weren't necessarily that interested in APM at that point, but we've had pretty good adoption since then. A nice little thing we did actually was we run Google Plus internally for our social network. We did, New Relic basically gave us a whole load of free stuff. And so we created a hashtag, Cardo New Relic, that people could write posts to, questions or like things that they found useful about New Relic. And they would get some free stuff as a result of that. So that helped roll stuff out too. So since then, it's on actually a few hundred apps across a few thousand servers, which we found fairly painless overall. We've also been engaged with New Relic roadmap. So New Relic have given us access to a bunch of product managers of various aspects. And we've actually fed back quite a few issues, a lot of which we've actually seen been addressed, which has been great for us. So I just mention one last thing, actually, which is we're not just web apps, as I've hopefully given the impression. Some things that we do are very batch-focused, and we've actually used New Relic to monitor those as well. So you can mark up kind of arbitrary transactions. They don't have to be web transactions in New Relic. So this one is some of our delivery systems, which are really critical systems that need to run before the vans can go out. Basically, we had a performance issue where this was starting to slow down, but we couldn't figure out why. And so the guys actually installed New Relic, didn't make any code changes, and used the XML markup to annotate the different transactions in the application. And this performance issue had been going on for a couple of weeks, and it was getting to the point where it might actually cause serious operational issues. Because they couldn't figure out what was going wrong. Because they looked at like each individual app and each individual box, and it all looked completely normal, and yet somehow it was slowing down. But what they managed to do was by doing this, they wrote some dashboards, and they spotted that these 4 completely separate applications were all slowing down at exactly the same time. And so they narrowed down the common factors, and it was basically that they were all using completely different databases, but they were all hosted in containers on the same box in the end, and there was a purge job running that was slowing down. So this helped them to drill down to that. So in summary, I think probably one of the main things I'd say is actually really make use of the technical account managers at New Relic, because they can give you access to all the right people at New Relic, and we've seen really positive results from that. And they can actually do a whole bunch of non-technical stuff for you as well, such as coming in and running these seminars. So definitely take advantage of that if you can. Thanks.